Previously on the all-new adventures of the Doctor Who Book Club podcast.
Cool. So yeah, episode 100, Decalog.
Yeah, and next week I am on a holiday in Italy, and I'm just saying that because when I was a teenager, I spent quite a bit of time reading Decalogues whilst on holiday in various places.
So the tradition continues.
Yes, the tradition will continue, yes.
And now our story continues.
Adventures of the Doctor Who Book Club podcast. This is Matt in Minnesota.
Chris in South London.
Well, Chris, it is our 100th episode. It's finally here. And we just had shall we say, an explosive finale.
Yes!
In more ways than one.
Yes.
Last night. So we'll be getting to a new series review shortly. But
yes,
before that, we're going to be reviewing Decalog this month, which is the first ever short story anthology.
Yeah.
But before that, we have a little bit of book news to share.
Yeah.
We have 4 new Target audiobooks that have been announced to coincide with the Target books that are coming July 10th. So we have Empire of Death, read by Susan Twist, whom we saw in yesterday's...
Yes.
And The Robot Revolution, read by Varada Sethu, Belle herself. Lux, read by Dan Starkey. And The Well, read by Caliphan Dunn. It's a Welsh name, so I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly.
Yes.
And based on early listings, it appears there are at least 3 new Target novelizations due out on January 29th, 2026 by authors Matt Jones, Jenny Colgan, and Joseph Lidster.
Ooh.
And story titles have not yet been confirmed, but I can guess which one Matt Jones is writing.
Go on. I'm not sure I can, but yeah.
Maybe his story of the Satan Pit.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
If they're going to go back and do that one.
Yeah.
And in super exciting book news, apparently...
No, he can't be writing that one because the Well's already been done.
Were you making a joke about the Wells similar to the Satan Pit?
Oh yeah, sorry. I'm being thick. I am going to shut up.
The Impossible Planet / Satan Pit.
Yes.
That two-parter.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're fine. And in super exciting news for me, hello, sweetie, are you ready to become River Song? Apparently there's going to be a new Doctor Who Choose Your Own Adventure style River Song book written by Alex Kingston.
Okay.
And it's due out in February of 2026.
Okay.
And takes fans on a journey as River Song during an adventure when she's imprisoned at the Storm Cage Containment Facility.
Okay.
So this will be the second book co-written by Alex, the first being The Ruby's Curse.
Yeah, and also the first Choose Your Own Adventure-esque Doctor Who book written by a member of the cast.
Indeed, and the first that we've seen since the 2 that came out during the Capaldi era. So
yeah.
Very cool.
Cool.
All right, so since we've last talked, we've had 5 more episodes this season.
Yes.
So I guess we'll start with Lucky Day.
Yes.
I only had 2 things written down for this one. One, I liked how claymation the Shriek looked, kind of like in a... what were those monsters in the first Ghostbusters movie? The gatekeeper, or those kind of things. I thought that was cool. And then I also liked that Think Tank was like an evil, misguided version of Linda.
Well, yes, and also a callback to Robot.
Yes, which I think was intentional.
Yes, it must have been.
Any other comments on that one?
Yeah, I enjoyed that one more than I thought I was going to. Though I did know, because I watched it the next day, so I had heard that Conrad was not to be trusted, but also I guess it's kind of like a bit of a predictable thing that the new boyfriend is probably not going to be trustworthy. But yeah, I did appreciate that we went there and we showed, and that audiences were shown that people can think themselves into kind of like dark places.
Yeah, I'm glad they kind of tackled the whole like podcasting, toxic masculinity, Joe Rogan sort of,
Yes.
the manosphere type stuff.
Yes.
And the doctor's speech, at the end to Conrad. Although it went incredibly, wrong, because he took from that, how he created Wish World. But at the time, I thought it was really powerful.
Yeah, and also at the time, I thought that was the last we were going to see of him. I didn't think he was going to become a recurring fact.
Then Mrs. Flood walks up.
Yeah.
How about Story in the Engine?
I loved the Story in the Engine. I watched that on my phone. Now, why am I telling you that? Because on iPlayer, unless somebody knows, you can't get it kind of like to use the full form of the full size of your phone. You have to have it kind of with your phone vertical and just kind of like you cannot flip it. So I was watching it basically on the size of a postage stamp, and I just found it utterly absorbing. I was so glad, especially in retrospect, that we have had Ncuti as a bit of a kind of a briefer doctor than I had hoped. We have had an episode that you literally could not have done with any other doctor, apart from possibly the Fugitive Doctor.
Yeah, we had an all-black main cast.
Yes.
Black writer in Inua Ellams and a black director with Makala McPherson. So incredibly rare, and just such a refreshing change from both the lack of diversity in the RTD1 and Moffat era. Yeah. And I'm really glad that RTD has carried forward that commitment to diversity behind the scenes that really was a tentpole of the Chibnall era.
Yes. Yeah. It's a story that I don't think could have, I don't know, I feel it couldn't have been written by a white author, or at least it could have, there would have been so many pitfalls that it also felt like a story that had to be written. There was a love as well as an urgency about it. I adored it, and I think for me it's the standout of the season.
Yeah, and like you said, couldn't have been told in any other time or context or cast, really. And the fact that it is set entirely in Africa, and that it's in a barber shop, which is almost like a sacred space for people of color. So it's just it's really well done. And I loved the Fugitive Doctor's cameo in that story as well.
Yes.
And that she was simply credited as the Doctor in the end titles and not as the Fugitive Doctor.
Yes.
And I'm hoping her little allusion there is maybe we'll see that finished. Hopefully it's not just Big Finish, and if anyone deserves a little 5-part miniseries.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I mean, a lot's still up in the air.
Yes, indeed.
And then we get to Juno Dawson's Interstellar Song Contest.
Yes!
Which for me was another highlight of the season. I loved it. It was all of the world building. I liked how just delightfully queer and camp the whole episode was, with Gary and Mike and everything.
Yeah. We had a Eurovision we had an episode of Doctor Who about music, which actually featured songs that were catchy, and it convinced as a song contest. Having Rylan as the host is a lovely touch. I don't know how well known Rylan is in other parts of the world. I suspect probably not. But it turns out that he's a huge Doctor Who fan, and that he had been badgering RTD to be on the programme and also subsequent showrunners for years.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And I thought he was fun. Yeah.
I recognized him from his stint on Big Brother and stuff.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and that shot of the air bubble and the people floating in space, and just how striking and scary that was, and just incredible.
Yeah.
I hate to use the word beautiful to describe it, but it was just like jaw-dropping.
Yeah, I think beautiful is not a bad word to use, I think, but and the shock of seeing Carol Ann Ford back.
It's never Susan until it's finally Susan.
Yes, and the Rani.
in the same episode.
Yes.
And for a change, I wasn't spoiled, which was great.
Yeah.
One of the Doctor Who group texts I'm on exploded, so I knew something was up.
Yeah.
Not a big fan of the bi-generation sticking around, but at least, it gave us the interplay with the two Ronnies afterwards. But it really did feel like every Christmas coming at once with both her and Susan showing up.
Yes. Yeah.
And Kid and Win of the Hellions, they gave me like Pumpkin and Honey Bunny vibes from Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. They were great villains, I thought.
And I think we get a shot of turtle-like creatures near the beginning, which could be Chelonians, which is wonderfully delicious when you think about it in terms of look who's playing with your toys.
Yes.
And we get references to the new Zygon habitat and Alpha Centauri,
Yeah.
which is great, and the Delta Wave callback to Parting of the Ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, just really good. How about Wish World?
So, Wish World, I think, was the first misstep for me. I felt it was 45 minutes of setup. I was left hoping that we were building up to something spectacular. Yeah, it just felt slow to me. But what about you?
Well, I agree. I thought it was better paced and more interesting than its corresponding episode the previous season, which was The Legend of Ruby Sunday, where they were standing around in the VHS tape footage for 45 minutes. So
Yeah.
it reminded me a lot of like Fine Time mixed with WandaVision, the whole suburban aspect of it all.
Yeah.
I loved the idea of doubt being a key to unlock things, and
Yeah.
with a shot of the Ranny, we get Dimensions in Time now officially canon.
Yeah. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Well, didn't the Doctor say it was a dream of his once in one of the
Yeah.
new series adventures?
But if Sharda's canon, and Sharda also appears in The Five Doctors, so yeah, I don't know. I would still prefer to look away. Dimensions in Time.
I also appreciated how the underworld or the antimatter world, all of the effects were purple and pink,
Yeah.
which matches the CSO color scheme of items disappearing in the Three Doctors.
Yeah.
So that was a nice little callback. And then we get the finale.
Yeah.
A lot going on there.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. What did you make of the finale?
I enjoyed it. I thought it was about 10 or 15 minutes too long at the end. Like some of it could have been trimmed up for time, especially the last 25 minutes or so, which I think is what was tacked on from the reshoots that happened in February when the original ending changed. I don't know if folks have seen, but there's a photo of Ncuti as the 15th Doctor and Verada as Belinda dancing at a Mayday party at the end. And apparently the camera would have pulled back and up to show Susan overlooking the party and then her mysteriously disappearing, and that would have led into season 3. And there's even a shot of Carol Ann Ford in a different outfit from the one she appeared in some of the behind-the-scenes interviews, where it's a more gray and less white outfit. But now Carol Ann Ford holds the record from William Russell, longest time between return appearances, because Susan left earlier than Ian and returned later.
Ooh.
So she should now be the Guinness World Records holder.
But what about the Five Doctors?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I'd have to start the clock from there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Never mind. Ian, he still hold the record.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's very true.
Yes.
What did you think of the finale?
So I didn't enjoy the start. I mean, overall, I enjoyed it, but I felt that we were suddenly visited by Bonnie Langford from season 24. I thought her acting was poor. I really did. I just felt like I was watching not a family program, but a children's program.
Oh, where she confronted the Rani, and
Yeah, and her coming in on the motorbike, I was kind of thinking, surely there was somewhere you could park that sooner. But, yeah, and I felt that Wish World felt very Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Yeah, I don't know. And I very much enjoyed how I knew Rani, Archie Punjab. I'm quite sad that she got eaten without possibly a regeneration.
maybe she's bi-generating in the stomach. You never know.
Yeah, of Omega. Yeah. But yeah, it was fun. I'm glad as well that Ncuti's doctor went out saving one person's life. I thought that was quite nice. He didn't go out saving the universe. But it did also feel a little bit tacked on. It did feel as if like we'd wrapped the story up, and I was kind of thinking, oh, thank goodness. Because we watched it on delay, and I had my phone in airplane mode in case anybody decided to message me. So I didn't know how far into the episode we were. And so I was thinking, oh, we're wrapping up. Oh, this rumour that he might be about to regenerate isn't going to come to pass. And then... oh, no.
Yeah, at various points I was elated that, like, he didn't bigenerate into Belinda, which I heard was one of the other rumors.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
There were some rumors that were just beyond the pale, and I don't know how I feel about Billy returning at the end there.
Yeah.
You know, technically, I suppose the Doctor is regenerating into the moment and not Rose, because he technically met the moment first.
Yeah, I guess.
But I do think she would play it differently, and she has grown quite a bit as an actor.
Yes, absolutely.
I just worry that it's in this sort of limbo where is the BBC going to go off and do its own thing? Do they have to wait for the War Between the Land and the Sea to air before severing ties with Disney? Is all that still up in the air? Like, I imagine that the reason Ncuti left instead of the original ending was that they couldn't keep filming these back to back, and these year-long delays while Disney made up their mind. Like, he's a rising star actor and he's got other things to do. So
yeah,
I know he blamed it on his knees when, in the YouTube video that aired afterwards. But yeah, I think it's because he's hoping for like bigger things out in Hollywood or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's cleaner this way. I also figured that it was probably, if there is a gap, and sort of being a Doctor Who fan and faced with this kind of thing, plus also being a Doctor Who fan who lived through all of the 90s as a Doctor Who fan, my instinctive reaction is, right, well, it's going to be a very long time till we see the show again on telly. So at least if that is the case, and I really hope it's not, we have set up an actor as the Doctor who Big Finish is already using. Mm-hmm. So Big Finish can carry on using them. And also as well, we don't have somebody who has been cast as wouldn't it be nice,
like a stunt casting or...
Yeah, or even if they'd cast like an up-and-coming actor or something who we hadn't heard about, but then they would always be just the Big Finish one. So in the same way that if the revival hadn't been a success, that David Tennant was quite prepared to be the Big Finish Doctor.
Yeah.
So I was having this debate with Lauren, and she hates the idea it's Billy Piper. She just thinks it's really corny. But I sort of said you needed to have somebody so that if it is like a year or 2 or 10, that there's someone that can be used in the comics and in Big Finish and in novels, rather than just closing in a regeneration. I think you needed to have some degree of certainty.
And potentially you could have Billy Piper appearing on screen as the Doctor, while also playing Rose in Big Finish in all the stuff that she's recorded with Eccleston to date.
Yeah.
So you could have her playing 2 different characters.
Yeah.
Simultaneously. You could even have a story where the Doctor goes back and meets Rose.
Yeah, you could also have Eccleston meeting a doctor.
Yeah.
Because that's what he's been doing, whether he's known it or not.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Overall, like, I thought this season was stronger than the previous.
Absolutely.
But it also very much mirrored the previous season in that you have this overarching mystery with an older woman, you know, Susan Twist or Mrs. Flood, and you have it culminating in the return of a classic series monster who only ever made 2 classic series appearances, whether that's the Rani or Omega. Well, I suppose Sutek only had the one.
Yes, Sutek only had the one, yeah. For me, I think that might have been the strongest series of the revival. Because as much as I've said that I didn't really care for our kind of closing 2-parter in aspects of it, I wouldn't describe either of those episodes as a dud. I could have done with them being, aspects of them weren't to my taste.
Like the unit turning into a turret?
Yes. Yeah.
Pivoting around, yeah.
Yeah.
Thought the whole upper half was going to lift off as like a aircraft carrier and then go flying around. So it was more subtle than I had imagined.
Yeah, yeah. But Lauren did say, since when have UNIT been using the Avengers Tower? And I said, UNIT have been using the Avengers as stuff for ages. But,
yeah, going back to the Flying Fortress.
yeah, I generally can't think of a stronger season in the revival era for my money. So, like, that's why I kind of wonder if we are going into a bit of a hiatus, then we have definitely found our season 26. We are leaving the audience wanting more.
Yes, agreed. And some of the stuff with like Poppy, like I feel like that was always planned, like because you had all those cutbacks or flashbacks to little bits of dialogue that were cut or missed out on.
Yeah.
Where, you know, Poppy was referenced throughout the season. So I think it really was just that regeneration portion that was added.
Yeah.
And I've heard that a rumor that Ncuti Gatwa had also filmed a cameo that he was going to appear in the war between the land and the sea. But now with this change, I don't know if they're still going to include that, depending on when that story is set.
Yeah.
Or if they're going to just reshoot it with Billy or just excise it entirely.
Yeah.
But at least we still have that miniseries to look forward to, in this upcoming hiatus, however long it is. But yeah, this season overall was very strong for me.
Well, I think we have had precedents of Doctors appearing out of order in spin-offs. Because didn't David Tennant appear in Sarah Jane Adventures during Matt Smith's tenure?
No, I think that he filmed that last after he had filmed his regeneration, but it went out before. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, similar sort of deal.
Yeah.
A couple of other just quick notes about the finale as it relates to privacy concerns. So, UNIT chipping everyone in the neck. I thought it was kind of funny that glowing red dot was on the right side for everyone, and then except for Millie, because she was facing her mom, they chipped her on the other side of her neck so her mom couldn't see it blinking.
Yeah.
Just to demonstrate character growth on the part of the Doctor. So you remember when he scanned Belinda and she said, hey, you did that without asking, it's an invasion of privacy.
Yeah.
Right before he, scanned Poppy to see if she was human or not, a simple may I to Belinda would have demonstrated a hell of a lot of character growth on the Doctor's part.
Yeah.
Just in that 1-2 word sentence.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, really enjoyed it. And looking forward to season 3/season 1 or whatever it's going to be called.
Yes. Yeah, where we enter some kind of like Marvel DC-esque rebooting of the season numbers.
And we still have at least 3 more books and 2 more audios featuring Ncuti's Doctor on the way too.
Yeah. But also, like, this is the first time that we have had a regeneration that had not been announced in advance.
That's true.
Yeah.
A first surprise regeneration, depending if you count the Journey's End one or not.
Well, it wasn't a regeneration, so...
Except it later was.
Yeah, okay, yeah, sure, that's true.
But yeah. All right, well, that is series 2 in the books. Chris, what do you have for show and tell?
So, for show and tell, I thought that I would delve back into Big Finish's back catalogue. And I have wandered down memory lane with the Doctor Who Big Finish title, Memory Lane, which features Paul McGann and also Charlie and Chris. And it's a brilliant audio written by Eddie Robson, so there's going to be jokes. And the TARDIS crew find themselves in a lovely bit of kind of suburbia, but they keep on encountering the same people, and the streets all look identical.
Oh, is this the one with the ice cream van?
Yes,
I have heard this one, and this is the one where I learned that ice cream vans in the UK play green sleeves.
Yes.
Which they don't over here.
Yes. Yeah. I thought it was brilliant. Also, as well, it was quite interesting, I felt, from a representation point of view, because of the fact that at the heart of it is certainly what sounds like an Afro-Caribbean family. I'm not going to go into too many details, but I thought it was brilliant, and I would strongly recommend folks search it out on Spotify or where have you. It's probably my favourite that I have heard so far of the post-Divergent, or hey, even from Zagreus onwards, sort of Charlie and Paul McGann era stuff. I just thought it was a brilliant story. And I've not heard too many people talk about it.
Yeah, I do remember enjoying that one, even though if the details have left my memory.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah. How about you?
So for me, just another short kind of item as well. I just wanted to highlight that there is a prequel short story to The Story in the Engine, written by Inua Ellams, and it's illustrated, and it features a number of the paintings, some of which we saw in the episode proper.
Yeah.
And so that episode ends with the Doctor saying, once upon a time, and that is how the prequel story starts. Prequel/sequel, I guess.
Yes.
But it's written from the perspective of Omo as a schoolboy, and we discover how he and the Doctor met in the midst of a terrible forest fire in Etsako outside of Lagos. Yeah. So, yeah, really fun short story. And I hope that if the show comes back, that they continue more of these short stories. We got quite a few of them during the lockdown period.
Yeah.
But I think this is the first one since.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if folks have heard about it or not, but we will include a link to it in the show notes.
Yeah, and it's an episode that it just naturally falls into. But also, I think you can enjoy the episode without it. I mean, it's not... I don't think that was an episode like Ghostlight where you would need kind of like cliff notes to explain what's going on.
Yeah, very true. So that brings us to Decalog.
Yes.
Our 100th title, over 100th title that we've picked. And, so Decalog was originally published in March of 1994.
Yep.
It's edited by Mark Stammers and Stephen James Walker, whom at this point had been doing the handbooks for Virgin, as well as working on the Decades books, the 60s, 70s, and 80s. It features 10 stories, only one of which is written by a woman. I'm pretty sure Vanessa Bishop isn't a pseudonym for Jacqueline Rayner, although Jackie Jenkins, I think Vanessa revealed herself to be Jackie, and Chicks Dig Time Lords in an essay in there.
Yeah.
And the book starts with an editor's note highlighting how Doctor Who has used short stories over the years, including in the Doctor Who annuals and the Dalek book way back in 1964, as well as Doctor Who Appreciation Society's Cosmic Mask fanzine.
Yes. So explain to people, look, you've enjoyed stuff like this, please buy it.
And I feel like Virgin were, in a way, trying to capture the popularity of... There were 2 volumes of Star Trek short stories published by Bantam in the late 70s that were incredibly popular, called The New Voyages anthologies. And this feels very much like Doctor Who's take on that.
I've not read those, but I think, I'm not disagreeing with you, but I think possibly also it's their way of seeing, can stories work with previous crews? Because it's before the Missing Adventures start. And so it's like, are people prepared to buy stories from the past? And also, can writers write interesting stories featuring past TARDIS crews?
Well, shall we... So there is a framing story, but I think we're going to hold off on talking about that until the final story. But know that it starts with what appears to be the 7th Doctor wandering into a
private investigator,
whose name I think is Bart Allison.
Yes.
And in like Christmas of 1947, and then Bart takes the Doctor to a psychic named Silverman who is able to pick up various objects in the Doctor's pockets and tell stories from them. And the first one is Fallen Angel by Andy Lane.
Yeah.
And of course, we recently read The Empire of Glass by him. And I would get the TARDIS timer out, but I don't want to hang up our FaceTime call with my fumbling. So I think we will have to go TARDIS timerless. We're trying some new technology, folks. But anyway, so we read Empire of Glass by Andy Lane. And this first story is the one that I had vague memories about, where there's an old mansion and the second Doctor's running around. And I think this may have also been my first ever time experiencing the second Doctor in any medium outside of briefly seeing him in the 5 Doctors. So it's memorable for me from that perspective too.
Yeah.
So it opens in the 1920s where we meet Lucas Satan, Seyton, not Satan as the beast. And he's a gentleman thief known as the Fallen Angel. And he saves a man named the Doctor from some androids who have pursued him to London in kind of like an alley shootout. And the Doctor explains that he and his friends recently arrived at an alien prison, which is disguised as an English country home. And Jamie and Zoe are still trapped inside the house, surrounded by android guards who are programmed to kill any intruders on sight.
So Lucas Satan, the fallen angel, along with his pilot friend Ketters, help the Doctor to infiltrate the house, where they discover that the alien prisoners are all dead, having turned on each other and slaughtered themselves. And the android guards, so they hadn't been programmed with any instructions as to what to do if the people they're guarding had died. So they keep trying to kill the intruders. But Satan and the Doctor manage to dispose of the guards and rescue Jamie and Zoe. And the Doctor arranges for the prison to be shut down by its absentee wardens, kind of like remotely. And as he departs, the prison's mental safeguards erase all memory of the event from Satan's mind. So that was Fallen Angel. What do you make of that?
I enjoyed this one. I thought it was a good one to start off with. I like Andy Lane's writing style.
Yeah.
The Fallen Angel character reminded me a bit of Michelle Ryan's character from Planet of the Dead. Kind of like this aristocratic agent. I think another similar one showed up in, was it?
Crime of the Century.
I was thinking of the John Peel Evolution.
Okay. Yeah.
Arthur Conan Doyle in the version of Torchwood.
Yeah.
And there's a big air battle in this too. The robots flying around reminded me of like Max Fleischer's Superman robots from the 30s. And that air battle felt very much more Third Doctor than Second.
Yes.
We did get a fair share of helicopters and hovercraft in the tail end of the Second Doctor era too. It also makes me wonder if this could potentially be season 6B. I mean, you have Zoe instead of Victoria, but you have the Doctor referencing his people helping build this manor, establishing a perception filter around it, programming the robots. We also have references to a prison asteroid, which could be Shada, Stormcage, or even the prison from the Blood Cell.
Yeah, there was also as well, wasn't there a prison that was going to be appearing in, there was a Second Doctor story, a story that wasn't made, a lost story that involved, it was a kind of, wasn't it a planet that was ruled by women that had a prison?
Oh, yeah.
I'm blanking on the name.
I have the script book.
Yes.
The Prisoner in Space.
So, but yeah, for me, the story features a lot of the Fallen Angel. So it feels like a Fallen Angel story that is guest starring the Doctor. But it's also interesting to see something from someone else's point of view, and it felt very much to me like a take on, there's a series of stories that was recently turned into a Netflix series, Arsène Lupin, who is a French gentleman thief from round about the time of Sherlock Holmes.
And was in one of the first Miyazaki movies.
Yeah.
Lupin the Third.
But yeah, ultimately, it's a fun story. I remembered reading it. I think I read it with less frustration this time round. Because I think the first time round I was going, right, is the Doctor going to rock up? Because like in those days, we didn't have Doctor Light stories.
True. And a couple of other nods in this one. Crustacoids are mentioned, but not. They were first mentioned, but not seen in Carnival of Monsters. And then Lucas Satan returns in The Shadow of Wang Chiang to steal a painting. And the object in this one was an intricate clockwork duck that was in the Doctor's pockets. And I guess Andy Lane would sort of revisit this gentleman rogue character with the celebrity historical spy we saw in Empire of Glass.
Marlowe?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of the same sort of
similar vibe.
Character
guess,
archetype,
yeah.
So then we get interludes between each story, which connect this back to the overall plot.
Yes.
But it's essentially them sitting around and saying, okay, that was interesting. Let's try this other object.
Yeah.
And our second object is a vial of mercury, which reminds me of a fluid link, but is not a fluid link. And so we get the Duke of Dominoes by Mark Platt.
Yes.
And this features it has a cameo by a doctor, but it's mainly a master story.
Yes.
The Delgado Master, so, like Third Doctor era.
Yeah.
Even though it's set in 1930s Chicago. So Mark Platt, of course, wrote Ghostlight and Downtime, as well as several audios for Big Finish, most notably Spare Parts and the Philip Hinchcliffe Presents series with the Fourth Doctor and Leela. And he also wrote the Eighth Doctor and Susan crossover and Earthly Child. The Master is trying to assemble the fragments of the Godhead, so he's on his own demented version of a Key to Time quest.
Yes.
Where it's an artifact of unimaginable power from the distant future. He travels to 1930s Chicago, where he disguises himself as a mob boss while he tries to steal the last fragment from the Wainwright Museum. And I thought that was kind of interesting that you get the juxtaposition of this, and it reminded me of like the segments of Blood Harvest, where you have, it's a nice counterpoint to how the Seventh Doctor is in that, and they're both kind of bootleggers running distilleries on opposite ends of town for different purposes here. And then before he can steal the final fragment from the museum, his TARDIS is stolen, and Grace Wainwright, who's the curator, turns out to be the guardian of the Thought Core. So here you've got a mysterious curator, and she warns the Master that he's being used by the Godhead to assemble itself. And it's the Thought Core which has possessed his TARDIS and sent it back to collect the remaining fragments. His TARDIS, which now kind of looks like a star, is on its way back. But without the Thought Core, the rest of the Godhead is a fragmented creature with no control over its most basic instincts. Wainwright is killed by the Master's secretary, who herself is under control of the Thought Core.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there. So the Master, he's discovered that his hypnotic powers are being suppressed by the Thought Core. And so he flees with Grace Wainwright's silver bracelet, which is in fact a mercury fluid link that the Godhead requires to complete itself. And the Master hides out in a homeless shelter, trying to remind himself of the discipline he learned at the Academy and regain control of his own mind. Eventually his TARDIS returns, bringing the Godhead with it, and when the Godhead tries to force him to bring it the bracelet, he realises that it requires a living mind to complete itself. He refuses to submit to the Godhead, however, insisting that he remain in control. As the Godhead attacks him, he flees to the shelter's kitchens, and just as the roof comes down on him, the TARDIS materialises, the Doctor's TARDIS. And the Fourth Doctor and Sarah are in need of mercury to repair the TARDIS, and they emerge, find, and grab the fluid link and depart, completely unaware of the chaos that's just breaking out just outside.
And I took that to mean they materialize like on top of the rubble, and so the Master's underneath them.
Yes.
And they're literally like walking around on top of
Yeah,
it.
yeah. So whilst the Master lies trapped beneath the rubble and the Doctor's TARDIS, the priest who runs the shelter is accidentally exposed to the mercury that had been spilling out of the fluid link and joins with the Godhead, providing it with the spiritual purity that the Godhead requires to stabilise itself. The Godhead returns the Master's TARDIS and departs to explore the universe, as does the Master, thwarted once more. So, what did you make of this one?
There was a lot going on.
Yes.
I mean, it was enjoyable, but I did not have a bronze statue of Abraham Lincoln coming to life on my bingo card, which happens at one point in this story.
Yeah.
I did like how they added a morality component to the Thought Core, very similar to, the moment in the 50th having an AI interface.
Yeah.
And then I loved how the opening line of this one, which was, the slanting rain reminded him of prison bars, which was speaking about the Master.
Yeah.
What did you think of this one?
Yeah, I just thought this was a fun ride. I guess it's a brave choice having arguably another Dr. Light story. In fact, this is very Dr. Light, but it's just fun that also like the Master gets defeated by the Doctor and the Doctor's completely unaware, and like it's just a great fun story, and it does not conclude with regeneration, which I remember at the time thinking it did, or thinking it was going to, and so much so that as I was reading it, my memory was that the Master regenerated at the end of it. But he didn't. But yeah, I thought it was good fun.
I liked the references to the Ministers of Grace. They were this group that seemed like they were trying to position themselves as the Eternals for the next big go-round of the universe.
Yeah.
And of course, that's all predicated on the Big Crunch model of the universe, which was disproven in the late 90s, just a few years after this was published. And I liked the idea of the thought core being a few seconds ahead in reality. That gave me flashbacks to like the aliens in TNG's Times Arrow. I thought the conclusion was a bit unsatisfying. Well, I thought the Mercury mask, like guiding the corpse of the priest, was suitably horrific. Yeah. It reminded me a lot of Light blazing off at the end of Ghostlight, which was another Mark Platt tale. Yeah. And also the stone and the mercury and the shards needing to combine felt very much like how the statue and bow and arrow in Silver Nemesis worked. A couple of other just quick notes about this one. In his notes for Lung Barrow, Mark Platt mentioned that he had planned to include the Ministers of Grace in an unproduced Dalek story, and they also get a mention alongside Faction Paradox and The Pageant, which is another group of like rogue folks, in Craig Hinton's The Quantum Archangel. And the Pageant are from Daniel O'Mahony's Man in the Velvet Mask.
Okay.
All right. Well, I think that brings us to
The Straw That Broke the Camel's Back by Vanessa Bishop. And this features the Third Doctor, Liz, and Unit.
Vanessa Bishop took over the Shelf Life review column from Dave Owens, and then she's written a handful of short stories. I don't think she's written any like audios or she wrote the Jackie Jenkins column, which was later collected in a book. But I don't think she's written a whole lot for Doctor Who.
Quite a few short stories, as you say, including the intriguingly titled The Feast of 7, 8 and 9. Which I think is a pun that works better when you read it, rather than when you say it out loud. But Okay, so following the Silurian fiasco, the Doctor picks up a distress call for an alien trapped on the Earth and decides to take care of the problem himself without involving the Brigadier, because he is still furious as to what happened with the Silurians. The Brigadier becomes suspicious of the Doctor's activities and assigns Sergeant Purvis to spy on him. And Purvis finds proof that the Doctor is indeed engaged in something he doesn't want the Brigadier to know about. Liz finds herself caught in the middle when the Brigadier sends unit troops to the site that the Doctor was investigating, thus preventing the Doctor from getting to the stranded alien.
And infuriated, the Doctor continues trying to solve the problem on his own, but the Brigadier refuses to stand by and do nothing, particularly when villagers begin dying from epilepsy-related seizures. The alien is being protected by the local parish priest, but its attempts to communicate telepathically with the villagers have inadvertently resulted in their deaths. So this is a small, kind of gray-type alien with the big eyes, and if you stare into its eyes, you basically die. It's almost like a Gorgon from Greek mythology.
Yeah.
And the alien tries to flee into the woods when the Brigadier attempts to capture it, and when it tries to return to the church, it finds unit troops blocking the way. So it tries to scale the walls of the building, and confused and desperate, it tries to communicate telepathically with the soldiers blocking its way, and to prevent a mass slaughter, the Brigadier shoots and kills the alien.
What did you make of this one?
So I feel like the Brigadier seems overly antagonistic towards the Doctor in this story. Like we're only seeing one aspect of him depicted, and I thought his characterization needed a little bit more depth and nuance. Like, I understand maybe this takes place right after the Silurian story.
Yeah.
Although Liz mentions that she's seen the TARDIS Council outside of the ship, so I thought that first happened in Ambassadors of Death or Inferno, so the placement is still kind of a little weird to me.
Yeah, I thought it happened after Inferno when I first read it. But yeah, reading it again, I'm not so sure.
The ending was really sad. I wish the creature could have survived. And maybe the straw that broke the camel's back is more so the Brigadier becoming more compassionate in the end.
Yeah.
Because, like, the Doctor really lets him have it.
Yes. Yeah, because like at one point, the Doctor is basically, he's kind of resigned / fired, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
And Liz along with him.
Yeah. It's interesting. So again, the memory plays tricks. I thought that this story saw Liz leave from my memory of it, but it doesn't. However, you could see how it could, it's not a huge leap.
And there's another story with Liz later on where
yes,
she does leave, so maybe you were conflating the two.
Yeah.
I also didn't really, the setting, these are both like church-based stories with priests back to back with the previous one.
Yep.
So maybe change up the story order a little bit because they weren't really going in, doctor order or anything.
No.
It was interesting that the little alien is called an Aeroscent here, where just 6 months later in the first Frontier novel, we would have the Tizoon, where Greys were, shown, and then they'd also be depicted later in 2009's animated adventure Dreamland.
That classic, yeah.
Yeah. And the object in this story was a printed hymnal booklet with a drawing of a gray alien on it.
Right.
That brings us to the sequel to Pyramids of Mars.
Yes.
No, not Empire of Death, Scarab of Death.
Yes.
And this is a Fourth Doctor and Sarah Jane story by Mark Stammers.
Yes.
From what I can tell, this is his only piece of published Doctor Who fiction. We mentioned he had worked on a number of nonfiction pieces in the handbooks.
Yes.
He'd go on to co-edit Decalog 2 with Stephen James Walker, and then that was it from Mark.
Yeah, I'm not aware of any other fiction, but he did work on the handbooks, as you say, so it's very much from the non-fiction world. This story starts off with the Fourth Doctor and Sarah on vacation at the ruins of Pfister Osiris, and they find the body of an archaeologist called Edwin Carver, definitely not Howard Carter, clutching a familiar scarab gem, the Eye of Horus. And the Doctor sends Sarah back to the TARDIS whilst he visits Carver's hotel room. But whilst leaving, he's kidnapped by members of the Cult of the Black Pyramid. Sarah is being pursued by cultists, who she manages to avoid, and she encounters a beggar who had witnessed the Doctor's kidnapping, and the beggar tells her where the Doctor might be able to be found. But in fact, this beggar is a Time Lord in disguise, here to ensure that they do not lose their most promising asset.
And he also gives Sarah Jane like a key card to get into this pyramid hotel, which was this around the time that big pyramid opened in Las Vegas? I wonder if that was...
Yeah, possibly.
Some of the inspiration for the casino elements and stuff.
Yeah, it might well have been. I'm not a historian of Vegas, but certainly I have a sense that pyramid has been around for a while. So, yeah.
And the Doctor and Sarah are really taking their trip because of the events in Pyramids of Mars, so this likely follows very, soon after that story.
Yeah.
So on her new mission from the Time Lords, whether she knows it or not, Sarah disguises herself as a cleaning lady in John Pertwee style and breaks into the room where the Doctor is being held by the cultist's leader, who is Anwar Nazir. And Nazir claims to have taken Sarah prisoner as well, and although the Doctor knows he is lying, he hands over the scarab anyway to see what will happen. And of course this scarab is what's found in the Seventh Doctor's pockets, which is why they're telling the story in the framing device. And Sarah helps the Doctor to break out of the hotel room, and they follow Nazir back to the Black Pyramid, where Nazir intends to awaken the sleeping Horus. And the Doctor tries to warn Nazir that Horus was a monster who played with civilizations as a child plays with toys. And Horus is the brother of Sutekh, and is an Osiran as well. But Nazir ignores him and puts the scarab in place. And because the Doctor had secretly scratched it, damaging it earlier with its delicate circuitry, it short-circuits and incinerates Nazir. Horace turns out to have been dead for centuries due to a fault in his life support system, and the energy released by the short circuit destroys the Black Pyramid. So the Doctor and Sarah manage to escape before it explodes, and I guess it shoots off a light, so it creates a new tourist attraction for the next several hundred years.
Yes, on Interstellar Vegas. Yeah.
So I'm sure Sutek was clinging to the top of the TARDIS, watching in glee as he saw his brother's tomb erupt in light.
Yeah,
and Sutek knew he was safe, and his brother Horace's resurrection had failed.
Yes, something like that.
The other kind of fun thing about this is when we last encountered an Osiris scarab in the podcast, it was in the Tides of Time collection, where the Fifth Doctor and Perry encounter Kefri, who's another Osiris, in 1930s Hollywood in The Curse of the Scarab from DWM 85. Yeah. And this is retconned in the story by the Doctor mentioning that there might be other scarabs out there.
Yes.
And even more surprising than that, we have a cameo who hits on Sarah in a brothel, and that was Absalom Dak.
Oh, I did not realise that. I mean, I knew there was...
Yeah, he was carrying a chainsaw sword, and he references his wife by name.
Yes. Yeah, okay.
What did you make of this one?
I enjoyed it, though it seems a little bit weird that some of the names of these characters, given this is sort of like set in the future, that you have some very 19th century, early 20th century English names, and you've got these cultists who are being led by Egyptian sounding names. So Anwar Nazir can't help but, for me, evoke Anwar Sadat, who was the leader of Egypt for a long period of time in the 20th century. So I don't know, I almost feel like saying, it's a little bit by numbers, but it's not, because you don't have mummies all over the place. It's set in a different location, and also it features Horus.
The setting kind of with the spaceport and the desert planet, and it did feel futuristic, and almost gave me like the same sort of feeling when we were reading Beige Planet Mars in terms of like what was going on the planet and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it was quite a seedy planet. I mean, I guess if you're having something set in a kind of like a Vegas type place, it is only fair for it to be seedy. Or at least there is that temptation. You could do it as that way. But yeah, it was a bit of a surprise for like some of the places that Sarah goes to. But there is darker material yet to come in this anthology. So.
Yes, and next up.
Next up is The Book of Shadows by Jim Mortimer. We have done Jim's work before. He wrote, was it Eye of the Giant? I'm suddenly blanking.
Eye of Heaven and Campaign.
Yes, Eye of Heaven and Campaign. Yeah, he started out writing New Adventure, which he co-wrote Lucifer Rising with Andy Lane. And this story features the First Doctor and Barbara and Ian. And not Susan. So we are staying with a bit of an Egyptian theme, because the TARDIS crew visit the mines of Alexandria looking for some gold for which to make a ring for Susan's wedding. But the Doctor and Barbara are separated from Ian by a cave-in, and we're about 332 BCE. In this story, and so there are various kind of like mine workers who are enslaved as well as guards, and they all seem to recognise Barbara as their queen, and as she and the Doctor are taken to her husband Ptolemy, they realise that history has been changed. And this is where our dramatic reading takes place, courtesy of a long-time listener and friend of the show, Kenny Smith. And you can hear Kenny's work on Pieces of Eighth and Power of Three. So go and have a listen, and let's have a listen to the reading.
When they had dismounted, and the animals had been led away to be watered and stabled, Ptolemy urged Barbara to explain who her companion was. Somewhat nervously, she repeated the story she'd concocted for Aridius. I see. Ptolemy turned to acknowledge the doctor. In deference to your age and health, I will not require that you kneel before me. Barbara winced, but the doctor merely nodded his thanks. Your words do justice to your wisdom, he said, somewhat dryly. Ptolemy said, I understand you are a scholar. You must stay with us. In my opinion, short of acquiring a new county for one's empire, there is nothing quite like acquiring a new scroll for one's library. Barbara interjected, Then we have much to discuss. At Ptolemy's curious expression, she went on, I was telling the doctor how you have given the eastern quarter of the island to the Israelites. And not just Eleusis, but an enclave of the island on Pharos, where the Hebrew law is to be translated into Greek. The scroll shall be given pride of place in the royal library. Their position shall be symbolic of our interest in other cultures and systems of belief. An excellent idea, said the doctor. I salute your wisdom. Barbara scowled suddenly. And I condemn it. The doctor gave a frustrated sigh. I really must apologise for... Seeing Barbara's annoyed look, Ptolemy placed a restraining hand on the doctor's arm. A faint smile played around the corners of his mouth, as if something about the whole conversation amused him greatly. Allow the Queen to speak, he said. In the past, she has shown great wit and character. Indeed, her intelligence almost equals my own. He turned to Barbara. Speak, wife. I would hear your words. Barbara hesitated, then plunged ahead anyway. I was going to say, the translation of the Hebrew law and its placement within the royal library can hardly be reconciled with the fact that thousands of Israelites are incarcerated in the mines and prisons. Ptolemy stopped walking. He beckoned to a hovering figure. Barbara was intently watching his face as the figure came silently forward. And how many slaves currently dwell in the mines and prisons? Ptolemy asked the newcomer quietly. A feminine voice Barbara thought strangely familiar said, Rather more than 100,000, my husband, as you know. Ptolemy fixed Barbara with a steady gaze. So, it's only a small favour you ask. He appeared to consider her words. And yet, it amuses me to grant your wish, he said, with a lightly mocking smile. But Barbara wasn't listening. The newcomer's words had finally sunk into her mind. My husband? She turned, eyes widening with shock. The newcomer was an older version of herself. May I present my wife, Queen Barbara of Egypt, Ptolemy said. Never has a more unusual face graced the royal line, until now. Barbara was unable to tear her gaze from the woman. Looking at her was like looking into an invisible mirror, framed by the blue waters of the Mediterranean. The Queen glared contemptuously at Barbara, and she too realised she was face to face with herself. She blinked rapidly, her eyes rolled up, and she toppled to the ground. Ptolemy gazed down at the woman, her robes askew in the grass, and suddenly roared with laughter. I wondered which of you would be the first to faint. He beckoned Aridius forward. The captain deposited a fat purse in the king's outstretched hand. I think I'm going to have a sit down, Barbara said. Ptolemy smiled. You were a breath of fresh air on such a long journey. Think of it as my little joke. He knelt beside the Queen and began to arrange her robes more decorously. Barbara seated herself on a marble bench beside a jade statue of Alexander's warhorse Bucephalus and watched him. A joke? She's me. I'm her. That is... Barbara shook her head, was unable to stifle a grin. When did you know I wasn't really, you know? Oh, at once. The Queen rides as if born to the saddle. He glanced at Barbara's bruised neck and chin. You, obviously, do not. Somewhat overwhelmed, Barbara glanced sideways at the doctor for support. He frowned and said nothing. Ptolemy turned to Aridius. Send soldiers to free the Israelites from the mines. Have the treasurer arrange to compensate their owners from the royal bank. The captain studied Ptolemy closely for a moment before nodding smartly. What would you have done with them when they are freed, sir? Ptolemy turned to Barbara with an interested look. The idea was yours. How would you implement its details? Barbara hesitated. Was Ptolemy playing some game with her? Make the slaves scholars or clerks. Let them work for the city that way. Ptolemy nodded. That for the older ones, certainly, he agreed. But what of the others? Should we return them to family life also? Ptolemy was backing her into a corner. No, of course not. Barbara searched her knowledge of history for the correct reply. The most able-bodied of them must join the royal army in case Perdiccas continues to compete with you for the throne. Ptolemy nodded. A sound political judgment. He indicated to Iridius that he should pick up the queen and carry her back to the palace. I will join you in the war room to finalise the details. Iridius bowed, picking up the queen, and left. Ptolemy nodded once in Barbara's direction. Consider yourselves my guests at the palace. He turned to Iridius. The doctor waited until he'd walked around a turn of the path, and then angrily turned to Barbara. Are you quite satisfied now? Yes, I am, said Barbara angrily. Ptolemy's going to free the slaves from the mines, and Ian with them. Yes, and now you have seen to it that he will be impressed into the royal army. The doctor grasped his lapel and sighed. More grist to the mill of catastrophe. And what's that supposed to mean exactly? My dear, don't you see? Your interference could cause history to come completely unravelled. Oh, come now, Doctor. I see no evidence of... Oh, don't you indeed? The doctor pointed towards the harbour. What's that then? The Pharos Lighthouse. Ptolemy Philadelphus had it built in 200 and... Barbara broke off suddenly. Exactly. Ptolemy Philadelphus, whom we have seen only recently as a young boy. He glanced at Barbara and went on. Nor is that all. When I examined Alexander's corpse, I found out this. His entire cell structure was seriously damaged. I should say ravaged, and not by any earthly fever. Whatever killed him was of extraterrestrial origin. Barbara put her head in her hands and tried to think. It's impossible. History tells us... She stopped, stared at the doctor. History, he said quietly, is apparently being rewritten. But how? You said we couldn't change it. The doctor's head bowed in thought. Something else must be responsible. We must find out what, before the scale of the problem increases beyond our ability to correct. We must talk to the Queen. Find out as much as you can about her life before she came here. Yes, of course. But what about you? What will you do? I will investigate the Royal Library. There may be a letter commissioning the Pharos there. With luck, I will be able to learn how the knowledge of the future came to fruition here, in the past. All right. Do you know how to get there? According to the history books, the library was a hard place to find. I'll find it. I have a nose for a good book. Barbara watched as the doctor left the gardens. She would not see him again for 8 years.
And Kenny, thank you so much for reading and performing that.
Yes.
I really appreciate that. And folks, do check out Kenny's podcasts, Pieces of Eighth, everything Eighth Doctor related, and The Power of Three, which is very prolific and features several interviews with authors,
Yes.
many of whom which we've discussed on this podcast.
Yes. Good stuff. So, as we have heard, Barbara has met the real Queen, who turns out to be an older version of Barbara. The Doctor visits the Great Library of Alexandria and learns that it's been fitted with temporal baffles, which enable patrons to collect books from the future. And Barbara goes to the library to look for the Doctor, but accidentally passes through a temporal baffle and ends up 9 years in the past.
And the object in this one is a small lump of golden yellow rock, which is some of the gold that's being mined by the enslaved people where Ian is trapped. And as this is all happening, an alien spaceship just crashed into the Nile and kind of the Mediterranean there. And the confused and angry citizens are rioting as a result. And Barbara is beaten by an angry mob and loses her memory, but retains the connection to the TARDIS, which enables her to understand the alien Rakotis when he cries out for help. And so she's able to translate for him. And over the next 9 years, Rakotis helps Alexander and his successor Ptolemy to build an empire, while Ptolemy and the amnesiac Barbara fall in love and marry. But some refuse to accept Ptolemy as Alexander's successor, and 9 years after crash, civil war breaks out. And despite Rakitis's warning that his repairs are still not complete, Ptolemy forces him to raise his ship from the sea and strike down his enemies. And Barbara is also given birth to a child during this time.
Yeah, not called Poppy.
No. What was it the child called?
Yeah, what is the child called? I can't remember.
Yeah, Barbara's son was Philadelphus,
Okay.
who was 8 years old.
Right. Yeah.
So, as the ship rises from the sea, Queen Barbara sees it and finally regains her memory, rushing to the library just as the rebel army arrives, which I believe is led by Perdiccas.
So Ptolemy and a rebel soldier strike each other dead at the same time. And then Barbara realizes that that soldier was Ian. And Rakotis's ship explodes, destroying Alexandria. But the Doctor emerges from the temporal baffles with a book from his own homeworld, which somehow ended up in an Earth library. He gives Barbara and Rakotis the option of using it to undo the damage they have caused, and they agree to do so, erasing this alternate history, even though this means that Barbara loses her husband and family, and Rakotis loses his life in the crash.
So kind of like a big reset switch.
Yeah, it is. It is a bit. So that was The Book of Shadows. What did you make of that one?
I liked that it was set in the two different time periods and you're kind of jumping back and forth. I was a bit confused at the beginning, but it eventually made sense once it was all linked through the library and you had some kind of timey-wimey shenanigans going on.
Yeah, before that was a thing.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And a little disappointed that Ian isn't really in it or given any dialogue except for his little appearance. But it's also interesting that we have Alexander in this story because Jim Mortimer would continue to be intrigued by him pitching which would eventually become campaign.
Yes.
What did you make of this one?
When I first read it, this was the standout story, and this time around, I just really enjoyed it. And it was this story that I remember reading and going, okay, the Missing Adventures can work. And I think it's amazing how much plot is packed into this short story. Because this could have been a novel quite easily, I think, or at least certainly a novella. And yeah, I just found it gripping, even if there is a big reset switch that is hit. Because I remember reading this the first time around thinking, how are we going to get out of this? Because I hadn't watched that much Star Trek Next Gen by that stage. But yeah, it's memorable. It's moving. I mean, the Doctor makes clear to Barbara and Rakotis that there will be a heavy price. Not what the price will be, but there will be a heavy price for them undoing the damage. I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah, I thought this was poignant and a strong story for Barbara, but not a fan of reset switches, but it was exciting.
No, nor am I normally. However, it was such a great ride, I have to say. I just really, I remember reading this and just, as I say, just wondering, how are we going to get out of this? And kind of thinking, did Barbara suddenly look really older on the TV show? So is this explaining something?
Yeah, I wondered that as well when I was reading it, but then they reset stuff. In terms of the placement, Vicky not being here, I mean, is it really supposed to happen between the Dalek invasion of Earth and the rescue? It seems a little hard to believe because when they find themselves in a gold mine, the Doctor's all excited that they can gather some gold to create wedding bands for Susan.
Yeah.
And the only way he could accomplish that feat of navigation is if he was relying entirely on the fast return switch to take him back to Earth in 2160 or whenever.
Well, maybe he was going to, and then all of this caused a problem, and he just figured might as well not. And then he would wait years or several regenerations if you forget the 5 Doctors, and still not meet her.
And that brings us to our next story, which is Fascination by David J. Howe.
Yes.
The object in this story is a piece of chalk, and David J. Howe of Tellus Publishing is the author of Time Frame and The Transcendental Toy Box.
Yes.
I don't think he's done a lot of fiction.
No, I don't think so. So, the Doctor and Perry, and this is the fifth Doctor and Perry, and at this time I think was possibly only the third piece of fifth Doctor and Perry fiction.
It was a rare combination, which was expanded with. Perry does say she's been traveling with the Doctor for months at one point, so
Yes.
could have all the Aramim stuff have already happened potentially.
Yeah.
But she seems very naive here, and
She does. Yes. So the Doctor and Perry arrive in the medieval village of Zaire, S-A-I-R, Zaire, which is experiencing peace and prosperity even in the midst of drought. I've not looked up Zaire. I assume it's not a real place. Perry visits this taverna and drinks with a beautiful young man called Tbilibik. And while she's doing that, the Doctor is exploring the town and comes to suspect that the villagers possess incredible kind of like psionic powers, so kind of like mind powers. And Perry has been a bit bored by Tbilibik's posturing and leaves him to go and find a doctor. However, angered by her rejection, Tbilibik casts a spell of fascination upon her, and she immediately falls in love with him.
And this Tbilibik character reminded me quite a bit of Colin from the most recent season of Doctor Who.
Conrad.
Or Conrad, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, he has Conrad vibes.
So then the Doctor discovers that the elders of this town have been using witchcraft to ensure their people's survival, although that whole plot thread isn't really ever explained. But Tbilibik has been abusing his powers and is turning Perry into his devoted slave. To the point of where, we're talking like assault and potentially...
Yeah, I think we have to be careful here because we could get into a bit of a content warning discussion, but yeah.
Yeah, it's not...
It's unpleasant and it's not 5:30 of a Saturday evening kind of vibe.
Yeah, and it's consent is not involved, let's say that.
Yes.
And the Doctor alerts the elders to Tbilik's abuse and breaks the spell, and he and Perry depart, leaving the elders to punish, I'll just call him Conrad, for his crimes.
Yes. Yeah, so that is the end of Fascination. What did you think of it?
Ended way too abruptly. It was very unsatisfying. It's problematic, and I couldn't understand, like, if someone says, hey, you can write a Doctor Who story set it anywhere in time and space, what sort of story do you want to tell? Oh, I want to tell a story where Perry gets assaulted and I don't explain anything. And that's it. Okay.
Yeah, and the Doctor seems slightly annoyed. No, this is... it was, not very pleasant.
Yeah, the bottom of the collection for me.
Yes. Yeah, and also, like, Perry, even before she has a spell cast on her, she's acting out of character, I would say. Because I think she's quite keen on having a beer and stuff like that. So I'm okay, this doesn't feel like the person we met on Planet of Fire, but yeah, not for me.
Yeah, and we never get any answers, like, who are the sphere-like creatures that two of the villagers are communicating with?
Yeah.
Why does magic work in this village at all?
Yeah.
No answers to any of that.
No, it is frustrating. But yeah, okay, so that's that one. Next up, we have The Golden Door by David Auger.
And apparently David was a consultant for Doctor Who Classic Comics.
Yes.
But not much else is known about him. And whenever I don't get author details, I have a bad habit of assuming it's like a pen name or something.
Yes, yeah. So this story features the First Doctor, Stephen and Dodo, which we have remarked upon in the past as a TARDIS crew we do not see often.
And the object in this one is like a light bulb, but with different colored gases inside it.
Yeah. Oh, actually, did we say what the object was in Fascination? I can't remember.
I think a piece of chalk.
Oh, yes, we did. So So the first Doctor, Stephen and Dodo are taking a holiday cruise to the planet Bukal? Bukal? Yeah, let's go with that, Bukal. But when they try to pass through customs, someone else's face appears on the Doctor's holographic visa, and Stephen and Dodo suddenly denounce the Doctor as an imposter. Inspector Yerma, one of the inspectors there, locks up the Doctor and searches the liner, and finds the real Doctor, the Sixth Doctor, found unconscious in a garbage hold, having been beaten and left for dead. He's taken to the hospital to recover, but is attacked by the mysterious Miklos, a shapeshifter who disguises himself as an orderly and tries to poison him. So we have got the Sixth Doctor and the First Doctor together again at last.
Yeah, the Sixth Doctor's traveling alone, so he's probably
avoiding Mel.
Yeah, and the First Doctor, I mean, all the stories between the Ark and the Savages are kind of flow into each other, but there is that break at the end of the Gunfighters, so it kind of has to go there.
Yeah.
So we have the First Doctor then escaping from custody and trying to meet back up with Stephen and Dodo, but they refuse to explain themselves, and they threaten to turn him in again if he continues to harass them.
Yes.
And the First Doctor eventually runs into an old friend who provides proof of his identity, conveniently, on this random planet. And the Sixth Doctor, having survived Miklos's attack, disappears from the hospital whilst when the real Stephen and Dodo escape from the Starship liner where they had been confined all this time in their quarters or something. They were locked in. And Miklos attempts to kill them, but then the Sixth Doctor intervenes, and Miklos, the kind of shape-shifting assassin, is taken into custody. And he represents a species of xenophobic shapeshifters called the Malians, and is hunting two fugitives who have developed the ability to empathize with other species.
And the Sixth Doctor was helping these fugitives to escape to an extra-dimensional sanctuary through a gateway on the planet Bukal. But when Miklos attacked him, the two fugitives, alone and helpless, disguised themselves as Stephen and Dodo in the hope that the First Doctor, who was unaware of the presence of his future incarnation, will get them through customs.
And that was kind of a poor choice on the refugees' part to throw the person trying to help them under the bus there.
Yes, yeah. Miklos, however, switched the Doctor's visas, and the fugitives were forced to denounce the First Doctor to avoid being arrested themselves. And the Sixth Doctor helps the fugitives into the sanctuary, but Miklos escapes from custody and tries to kill them again. However, when Miklos fires his blaster into the closing gateway, he opens a dimensional rupture and is expelled to a random location elsewhere in space and time. And that is the Golden Door.
So I'm kind of a mixed bag on this one. So
yeah,
I enjoyed the interactions between the Sixth Doctor and Stephen and Dodo, and I don't think the First Doctor and the Sixth Doctor ever actually meet.
No.
And they're kind of in this busy spaceport, and they take some time to go to a carnival where they're being chased through this fair by this assassin. So it had some memorable moments, but the writing style I felt was really, I don't want to say pretentious. A lot of big words for the sake of big words, like cantilever, reminiscent, whilst, amongst, zealously, contemptuously, just a lot of adjectives like that just slowed the story down a bit.
Yeah.
And what did you make of it?
I didn't particularly care for it, I have to say. I was reading this one sort of slightly episodically on public transport, and I just found it quite confusing. I think it's one of these things that you have to just sit down and read it in one in one seating, I think, because otherwise you're just going to get thrown by it, I think. And this is the only appearance of the Sixth Doctor in this book.
Yeah, he doesn't get a story all to himself.
Yeah, it feels a bit bad that we've got two First Doctor stories, two stories featuring Liz,
The Fourth Doctor appears in 3 stories,
Yeah.
although
yeah,
one of them is kind of a cameo.
Yeah.
And then the Third and Fifth Doctors also get 2 stories each.
Yeah. And the Sixth Doctor has like half a story. Yeah.
And the Seventh Doctor doesn't get his own story either outside of the framing narrative. But
Yeah.
keep in mind, too, this is before the Sixth Doctor goes through his, his Big Finish rehabilitation.
Yes.
So maybe that contributed to the lack of enthusiasm for a Sixth Doctor standalone story. I don't know.
Yeah, but when you've got it on the front page like 7 Doctors, like,
Yeah.
not really.
True. False advertising there.
Yeah, slightly. I mean, it is not the worst story in this collection.
Yeah, and the Sanctuary Dimension reminded me a bit of the Trap Street that Me was running.
Yeah.
Kind of with the Zygons and others. So.
Yeah.
All right. That brings us to Prisoners of the Sun by Tim Robbins.
Yeah.
And the object in this one is a... Did we say what the object was in the last one?
Remember, I just... the objects are often quite peripheral, I think it's fair to say.
It was the light bulb with the different gases in it, which
Okay,
I don't
yes.
even remember what that related to, but...
Yeah, yeah. This is not that Tim Robbins.
Yeah.
It's not the Hollywood actor.
Yeah, so this story, the object in this one is a disc from a message pod containing a 3D hologram of an AI alternate universe version of Liz Shaw, but not the one from Inferno.
Yes.
Yeah, so in terms of Tim, he also contributed a story to Decalog 2, and that appears to be it, which makes me wonder if this was also a pseudonym.
Well, so there is a Tim Robbins who has been writing blog posts about the current season of Doctor Who, or the recently finished season of Doctor Who. So
Maybe he's real and he's around, perhaps.
yes, yeah.
So this story starts with the Time Lords transporting the Doctor into Earth's future to pick up a message capsule intended for Liz Shaw, the aforementioned object. And with the help of the Doctor's alien scientific knowledge, this future Liz has founded a power cadre of scientific elite and has reshaped the world along purely rational lines. And when this timeline's Doctor protested, he was placed in cryogenic suspension, with his mind linked to the TARDIS Council's telepathic circuits, so his knowledge would continue to serve mankind. So kind of like a benevolent computer.
Yeah.
And the former members of UNIT who refused to join the power elite, such as Mike Yates and Sergeant Benton, now fight them from an underground base in London.
Yeah.
And I think the polar ice caps have melted and London is flooded and is more like Venice now, I think.
Yeah. So, so the Doctor is kidnapped and tortured by Mike Yates, but Yates has been compromised by his enemies and unwittingly leads the power elite security forces to his base. So
it seems in multiple timelines Mike can be compromised.
Yes. In the confusion, the Doctor escapes and makes his way to the Sun Trap, which is the solar power reservoir built by the power elite. There he meets Liz, who has come to believe that the Sun Trap is malfunctioning. And in fact, Dr. Helios of the Sun Trap, which is a great name, Helios, Greek for sun, turns out to be a Solarian, one of the last survivors of the race that was destroyed when the Time Lords detonated their home star to create the supernova, which first gave them the power of time travel. So he might not be a big fan of Time Lords. And indeed, Helios intends to guide the human race towards a new destiny and use them as an army with which to invade Gallifrey and destroy the Time Lords.
And the Doctor destroys Helios and returns to present-day Earth, where he gives Liz the message capsule. Inside the capsule, Liz finds a recording of her own mind, which she had made in the future, and when she sees what her and her dreams are destined to become, she agrees to abandon that line of thinking and put her knowledge to different use. So Liz, in effect, was kind of the baddie in this one.
Yeah.
Along with the inhabitants of the system that was destroyed by the hand of Omega to create time travel.
Yeah.
This one was a little all over the place for me. Tonally, it just felt off compared to the rest of the collection. It felt a lot more gritty and dark and violent. At one point, it turns into a prisoner parody.
Yes.
With Liz resigning at the end, but that turned out to be a dream, kind of following the prisoner main title sequence.
Yeah. Yeah, it's this interesting match between, as you say, the prisoner and Days of Future Past. But I mean, there is some interesting world building. So, like,
there is.
For example, we find out about who taught the Doctor Venusian martial arts. We don't get a name, but we find out that his tutor had been a Zen hologram created by Toyota, who'd bought out a leisure planet when its North American backers had been bankrupted.
And we also get a reference to an earlier incarnation visiting Venus.
Yes.
Which, again, is kind of set up for the Missing Adventures, because Venusian Lullaby was one of the early ones there.
Yes, yeah. But I don't think he's taught any martial arts.
Not at that time, no.
No.
It's more of, through the correspondence course.
Yes, yeah. But I think I enjoyed this one more than you. But it's not the strongest story. But also, I mean, you talk about tonal shifts. I mean, this is still a collection that features that charmless adventure of the Doctor and Perry.
True.
Yeah. For me, I enjoyed it. It felt like let's do Inferno, but via another means. So yeah, it's all right. I think it would have been slightly more interesting to see an alternative unit featuring maybe, say, Joe or something. That might have been more interesting, because like we've already had an alternative version of this unit before.
There's no love for Joe Grant in this anthology.
No.
Which is okay by me. I'll take a Liz story over a Joe story any day.
Yeah.
But yeah.
No Leela.
Maybe it'll get an extra point just for that.
I think Leela is in the follow-up anthology, if I remember rightly.
And then it does a really good job of tying season 7 and season 8 together. So it's set just after Liz has technically left unit, placing it between Inferno and Terror of the Autons. But then as a result of what happens in this story, the Celestial Intervention Agency decides to release the Master from his prison on Shada, apparently, and give him a TARDIS, which leads into the next story. And I was also surprised to see the Time Lord who's getting ready to put on his bowler hat.
Yes.
To make an appearance in the next story as well.
Yeah. So that brings us on to Lackaday Express by upcoming author Paul Cornell, featuring the Fifth Doctor, Nyssa and Tegan. Paul Cornell wrote goth opera, human nature. If we're having to tell you who Paul Cornell is, I'm very surprised.
Yeah.
So,
and the object in this one is a mouthpiece to a brass instrument, which we later learn is a saxophone.
Yeah. So the Doctor, Tegan and Nyssa arrive in a research station that's been abandoned after an attack by guerrilla terrorists. And they discover that there's a cyclotron that's still operational. And the Doctor and Nyssa analyse the odd readings from the cyclotron, which seems to indicate that there's a disembodied consciousness within the acceleration ring itself. And Tegan unexpectedly starts to channel the spirit of a dead woman called Kate.
But not Kate Lethbridge Stewart.
No. Or Kate Lethbridge, or Kate Stewart, or whatever it is she stars herself. But yeah, the Doctor realises that for some reason Kate has become trapped inside a cyclotron. And he programs the TARDIS to travel to the moment that Kate entered the cyclotron, the only moment at which she can escape again, and leaps into the cyclotron to rescue her.
And this does feature like a mass shooting on a space station, which is really chilling, kind of happening here, and why Kate jumped into the cyclotron in the first place. So she's been trapped by the laws of physics, endlessly reliving her own life, and capable of visiting any moment in it, but unable to change them. So kind of like the time storm that Belinda experienced in Robot Revolution.
Yeah.
And as a Time Lord, the Doctor's able to halt the flow of time as Kate experiences it, but she refuses to leave with him, and instead tries to change the past so she'll never have to go back to the base in the first place and have to suffer through that same terrorist attack and her endless life in the cyclotron. And her attempts to change history damage the time vortex and threaten to destroy the universe. So the Doctor deliberately places himself in a life-threatening situation, and in order to save his life, Kate has no choice but to exit the cyclotron with him. And they escape in the TARDIS as the terrorists burst into the room, and the Doctor returns her to Earth to pick up the rest of her life where she left off. And I think the space station detonates at the end.
Yeah.
And then it ends with like a Schrodinger's cat type joke, as she isn't sure if her cat's alive or dead, but fortunately it was still alive, so they didn't kill off the cat.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you make of this one?
So at first when I was reading this, I was very confused and had kind of no idea what was going on as we were jumping through Kate's life, but I did appreciate, like, the more I read, the more things kind of slotted into place, and
yes,
I thought this ended up being one of the stronger stories, even if it was kind of a head scratcher at the beginning. How about for you?
Yeah, it's certainly one of the more experimental stories. In fact, is I would say the only experimental story in this collection, really, or certainly the most experimental. Yeah, I don't think I necessarily enjoyed it as much as you did. I mean, I did find it a head scratcher, as you say. I don't know. I could have done with maybe a bit more. I almost want to say emotional heft. I didn't feel really tied into Kate myself, but still, there's interesting bits of dialogue. Yeah, and at least this is a story that's trying to do something that you couldn't do on television. Yeah, and is trying to kind of do something different. So I applaud it for that.
And the saxophone comes into play, and this was also a creepy scene because one of the astronauts on this station, who eventually turns and starts murdering the others, like, he would stay up late at night playing his saxophone, and it was very melancholy and kind of the sadness, and like, that was striking. And there were definitely some images from this that will stick with me that I'll remember, but it was somewhat confusing at the beginning. But to your point, it is the most experimental one of the bunch. In terms of, like, where this one's placed, there very much Tegan and Nyssa are still mentioning Adric's death.
Yes. Yeah, so it is after Earthshock, and so it is a story that is about grief. Yeah, for me, I think I could have done with another way of handling or of showing how they experience the grief, but still, I mean, it's something different, and it is addressing one of the great failings of the TV show that the TV show skipped pretty much from Earthshock to Time Flight with kind of like a oh well, and at least here we have a bit of an exploration.
Yeah. So that brings us to our final story, which is kind of the conclusion of the overarching framing narrative.
Yes.
Which is Playback by Stephen James Walker.
Yep. And as is a bit of a recurring theme, Stephen James Walker is known for the handbooks, and I don't think was particularly known for fiction writing. I'm not aware of there being... I'm just having a quick check. So not aware of there being too many other short stories that he wrote. But so let's just kind of begin. So it's the year 1947. We're in the Truman administration, as I think it points out, and a strange man with no memory has just hired Private Eye Burt Allison to find out who he is and trace his recent movements around Los Angeles. And Allison is intrigued by the man's claim, and also by the number of inexplicable objects in his pockets, that are presumably quite capacious. And so Allison decides to take his client to the psychometrist, fortune teller, Silverman, who is a man with the ability to touch any object and tell where it has been, which is quite useful for this sort of thing. And as he... But I was thinking about it, I don't know if that's a skill I would ever want. Like, I wouldn't want to sort of like pick up someone's iPhone and just know exactly where it's got. Like, I don't want to know. As they approach the house, they are surprised by Silverman's bodyguard, and Allison must stop his client from beating the man's head in with a rock.
Very first Doctor moment there.
Yes, and Silverman's bodyguard then recognises Private Eye Allison and allows him in, and Silverman, who's become intrigued by the stranger's story, agrees to help. He begins to sort through the objects from the stranger's pockets, and each object carries with it a different story.
And that's kind of what opened the book. And then
Yes.
as these stories are told, it becomes apparent that Allison's client is the Doctor, or one of him at any rate. But they seem no closer to finding out what he was doing in Los Angeles. And he's dressed in a brown jacket with a question mark pullover, so very much the Seventh Doctor.
Yeah.
And Allison, however, has come to certain conclusions of his own after seeing his client's reluctance to let Silverman touch a Bucolian visa and his utter refusal to let him touch a newspaper reporting recent UFO sightings. Not to mention the fact that the Doctor described in the stories has a great respect for life, while Allison's client nearly murdered Silverman's bodyguard. Allison therefore takes his client out to the town mentioned in the newspaper report, holding him at gunpoint and demanding to be taken to the real Doctor. And as he suspected, his client turns out to be the shape-shifting assassin Myclots, who appeared in the first and sixth Doctor story.
I mean, it's really lucky that he had that artifact around for Silverman to touch, and he didn't have the opportunity to get rid of any incriminating evidence. So a flying saucer suddenly appears over the town. Myclos, the assassin, overpowers the surprised Allison and takes him to his hideout, where Allison finally meets the real Doctor.
Who's bound up and gagged and stuff.
Yeah. And so the Marlians, these shape-shifting folk, are invading Earth, but Myclos has found he was developing empathy for the human race, and he tried to correct the sort of genetic stabilizer, but the Doctor stole it and hid the stabilizer somewhere in Los Angeles, which is why Myclos wanted Allison to retrace his steps.
So he was developing the same empathy that the two refugees that were posing as Stephen and Dodo were developing as well.
Yes, and possibly the Doctor develops himself in his own way. So Allison helps the Doctor to escape, and the Doctor rigs the hideout to self-destruct, destroying the approaching Malian saucer and putting an end to the invasion, and in turn playback and the anthology.
Yeah, and unfortunately that explosion also kills Myclots, who, if he's developing all of this empathy, it seems kind of a shame to then kill him off. So I was a little disappointed in that outcome. I thought it would have been better if he lived and could have been taken to that same refugee space that the others of his species went to. But maybe he didn't develop enough growth or something.
Yeah. So what did you make of this one?
I wasn't super surprised that it wasn't the Doctor. I think some of the interludes in between the stories make that clear that the Doctor's very much acting out of character. I don't know if you were surprised by that revelation or not.
I think I knew that there was a twist coming. I couldn't remember what it was. But also as well, I think I did find this story quite a slog. So, yeah. I was like, oh, okay, can we get to the point?
Allison being a detective, I kept wishing that it was Melody Malone. This framing narrative would work so much better if this was River. So I had that in my mind, as I was reading it too. But I appreciate that the anthologies we've read over time, I like the ones that have a framing narrative, I think, more so than the ones that are just straight up, random collection of stories. So I didn't mind that bit of it.
Yeah, where on the other hand, I felt it was unnecessary. It kind of, to me, it suggested a little bit of a fear that, the stories weren't strong enough. But I also appreciate that in some ways it's a nod to horror anthology movies, which I've largely not seen, where you may have some kind of linking narrative, but
And the Doctor calls out for Benny at the end, so she sort of gets a cameo, although the detective thinks it's a guy.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, what do you think of the anthology overall?
I overall enjoyed it. There were only a couple, of the 10 stories, there were only 2 or 3 that I actively disliked, and were kind of misfires. But overall, I thought the collection was quite good, and I would recommend it if you're able to track down a copy of it.
Yeah.
And for me, like I said, I appreciated the framing narrative more than you did.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give this one an 8 out of 10.
Okay. Yeah. For me, I'm giving it a 6. And I think a large bit of that 6 is for the Book of Shadows, which I greatly enjoyed, and also the camel that broke. Crikey, Chris,
The straw that broke the
the
camel's
straw that
back.
broke
Yeah.
the straw that broke the camel's back. Yes. yeah, that one. I think if people have access to a copy of it, I would say, yeah, give it a read. But I think there will be some stories where I would say, yeah, if you're feeling like kind of like skipping, it's not going to. I don't know. It's not my favourite anthology, I have to say.
Well, there are 4 other Decalog anthologies, and who knows, we might get to another one someday. So
yes, indeed, we may.
Perhaps it'll go downhill from here for me and uphill for you.
Well, so I remember vividly, because I read the book, I think not long after it came out. And it was kind of like during a time where I was traveling around little bits of kind of like Northern Europe. And I just remember like I was on a car journey and being utterly gripped by the Book of Shadows, and like to the point where I looked up and suddenly we were in London, and like we'd left Dover and I'd done Channel Ferry, and I was just enthralled by it. And yeah, and I also remember, I think first time around I struggled a bit with the master story, but then I remember just loving Vanessa Bishop's unit tale that I am mucking up the title of. But yeah, so it brought back memories for me. But I also as well remembered, that the high point that time round was the Book of Shadows, and it remains the Book of Shadows for me.
Well, between our 2 scores, it averages out to about a 7 out of 10.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to listener feedback.
Yes, let's. So we have had some feedback on their Facebook. So we have heard Kenny, our reader for this month, who very much sort of remembered reading Decalog at the time. Let me just bring it up. Oh, in fact, we've had another comment. So Jared Cooper has said that they're rereading it at the moment. And Kenny said that he found Decalog to be a good fun book, which he remembers with a lot of affection, with an object linking one story to the next. He also congratulated us on reaching our first century, and said 9 more years or so till the second. So so that's lovely.
We also heard from Kenny Smith on Blue Sky, who says of Hunter's Moon that he was looking forward to hearing that one as ever.
Yes, that's good. That's what we've got on Facebook.
And we have one other comment on Blue Sky from Keith Say, who said he enjoyed our Hunter's Moon podcast and thanked us for it. And he said it was a grim old story, which we made much more enjoyable.
Good. Cool.
So I think that brings us, Chris, to what we're going to be reading for our 101st podcast.
Yes. So I wanted to take us into the 21st century of sorts. I wanted us to experience one of my favourite doctors, and also as well an author who I think we've enjoyed in the past, though a companion of whom we possibly give some mixed marks. So Matt, we are going to, for next month, be experiencing Royal Blood by Una McCormack, which features the 12th Doctor and Clara. And Glamour fans, be excited. We're back in the Glamour Chronicles.
Which I don't really remember what that has to deal with. A certain type of technology, maybe.
Yeah,
It's a very loose.
It's a
through
very
thread,
loose thing.
yeah.
You do not need to have. I don't think you'll. So it appeared in Big Bang Generation and in Mark Morris's story.
In India, yeah.
Searching Partition. So yeah. So that's what we're reading next time.
One of my favorite companions. Not quite up there with Leela, but you know.
No, and I have a fourth Doctor pick yet to come. So play your cards right.
Well, on that note, until next month, this has been Matt in Minnesota.
Chris in South London. Happy reading. Stay safe.
Thank you for listening to the all-new adventures of the Doctor Who Book Club podcast. Special thanks to George C. Music for use of their song Doctor Who Theme Swing Jazz Version. You can follow us on Twitter at ANDWBC Podcast and like us on Facebook. Help other listeners to find us by leaving a rating or review on Apple Podcasts or your podcatcher of choice. You can contact the show by emailing your thoughts to andwbcpodcast@gmail.com. And until next month, happy reading.
Polish, 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 polish.